Archives of Prasar Bharati presents the timeless treasure of golden era.
Hello and welcome to Living on the Edge. In this episode, the conclusion of our two-part series on Gir. How India's largest mangroves, home to the endangered Olive Ridley Turtle, are being destroyed, and why Footpath Building needs to be more eco-friendly. Last week we did a story on how conservation in Gir has been instrumental in saving the Asiatic lion from almost certain extinction. This week we take you back to Gir, but this time you'll see how a successful conservation movement can easily go wrong, reversing decades of hard work. Priya Sumaya reports.
Hemmed into the Kathiawar Peninsula and ruthlessly hunted, the Asiatic lions would have disappeared altogether if it had not been for belated protection measures. Today there are 300 lions in the Gir forest, the only Asiatic lions left in the wild in the entire world. The number may not seem too considerable, but it's outstripped the carrying capacity of Gir. This means that the sanctuary isn't large enough for so many lions, and the authorities are being forced to consider many options, including translocation. But even as they grope for solutions, they are faced with external pressures that threaten the very existence of the forest. The forest and areas around it have been found to have rich limestone deposits, and hundreds of quarries have appeared around Gir. This mine, for example, is less than 100 meters from the boundary wall. You may well argue that mine owners have a right to commercially exploit areas outside the forest, and you would be right. But miners have begun to encroach into the forest with impunity, as it's impossible to effectively patrol the perimeter. Their frenzied search for limestone has damaging ecological consequences. Limestone is crucial in replenishing of groundwater, as rain seeps through it into underground channels. Once limestone is removed, water can't filter through and underground sources of water dry up. This is already evident in Gir and areas around it.
Because of mining as well as excess withdrawal of the groundwater in periphery of Gir, groundwater has depleted, that is recorded most of the places, and that will result into increase in salinity, and it is happening in some regions.
Forest officials also fear that cement companies and mine owners will eventually eye areas inside the forest, and their political clout might just weaken the government's resolve to protect the area. If this happens, it could spell disaster for Gir's wildlife. Many years ago, a small temple dedicated to the goddess Durga was built here in the middle of the Gir forest. Villagers often came here to pray. Then a few decades ago, a complex was suddenly set up. Over time, the number of devotees increased, and now busloads of people travel through the forest every night. This, coupled with the loud puja sounds, have driven animals away. Besides, the presence of large numbers of outsiders increases the possibility of poaching, an inference borne out by past experience. And things can only get worse as temple trustees now want several hundred acres of land to extend their complex and set up a hotel. The temple question is to be decided by court, and conservationists wait with bated breath for a decision favorable to wildlife in the area. Because if the temple trustees win, destruction of the forest is inevitable. Is there some kind of pressure on the forest department?
Yeah, now we can say it is a mild pressure, not much now. But definitely at times the pressure becomes unbearable and they are playing the religious sentiment of the people.
When we asked the priest if he was aware of this, he feigned ignorance.
ये जो ट्रस्टी जो हैं इस मंदिर का वो एरिया लेके बड़ा मंदिर बनवा रहे हैं यहाँ ही पे।
ना ना ऐसा नहीं। जो लोग मंदिर में आते हैं खासकर दर्शन या धार्मिक भावनाओं से, लेकिन वो लोग ये नहीं जानते हैं कि उनकी हरकतों से जंगल को कितना नुकसान हो रहा है, वन्य जीवन पर क्या असर पड़ रहा है। ना तो उसे कोई रोक रहा है ना कोई टोक रहा है। आसपास की ज़मीन में काफ़ी प्रदूषण हो रहा है।
For several generations, thousands of Maldari and Siddhi villagers have been living in the forest. In the mid-60s, when the forest was declared a sanctuary, many of them were moved out. But today, over 4,000 tribals continue to reside in the forest. Their presence in the forest would not otherwise be a problem, but their population is on the rise, and so are the sheer numbers of their cattle. In fact, though only the Maldaris have permits to graze their cattle in the forest, it has been found that animals from nearby villages regularly enter the sanctuary. Living on the Edge came across this herd of cattle seized by rangers for illegal grazing. The presence of cattle and people in such large numbers is already resulting in the degradation of the lion's habitat. In the early 80s, 3 lions were killed on this railway line. Every day, at least 5 trains pass through the Gir forest, and so does a busy highway. Forest officials feel that wildlife movement patterns are disrupted as a result. Ultimately, if mining activity is allowed to grow into the park, if areas are denotified and people allowed to pour in and even reside in the forest, the sanctuary will cease to exist. At stake is the survival of the lion and the rich and varied wildlife of Gir, and the decades of conservation.
From the dry, deciduous forests of Gir to the warm, humid mangroves of Bhitarkanika Sanctuary in Orissa. It's home to the endangered Olive Ridley Turtle and plays a crucial role in safeguarding the coast from cyclonic disturbances. And yet, prawn farms funded by the World Bank, illegal trawler activity, encroachments and a fishing jetty are all sounding the death knell of the sanctuary. Sunil Manoharan reports.
On the east coast of India lies the most diverse mangrove habitat on the subcontinent. The Bhitarkanika Wildlife Sanctuary is home to 62 of the 67 species of mangroves found in India, even more than what's found in the Sundarbans. Bhitarkanika is also the last refuge in India of the estuarine crocodiles, the world's largest crocodiles. It is also ideal habitat for the monitor lizard. But what makes Bhitarkanika really famous are the highly endangered Olive Ridley turtles. In fact, it has the world's largest nesting ground for these gentle giants. Up to a decade ago, these turtles were common and were found all over the world. Since then, increased economic activity has destroyed large chunks of their habitat. Belinda Wright, president of the Wildlife Protection Society of India, is leading an international campaign to save the Olive Ridley turtle.
But what has happened is their main breeding sites, the Arabada sites, have partly due to the fact that they were sort of rich areas, in food sources in the sea, and partly due to the fact that a lot of those areas were developed either for tourism or industry and got polluted.
And now the same problem has crept into Bhitarkanika. The Janata Dal government of Orissa commissioned a fishing jetty in the buffer zone of the sanctuary without getting mandatory permission from the centre and without carrying out an environmental impact study. The fishing jetty was supposed to increase trawler activity by 500 trawlers with a daily catch of 50 tons.
It's a clear violation of the law. And insofar as the law is concerned, the DFO there, that is the forest official, district forest official, had clearly given orders saying you cannot build the jetties, you cannot build the roads, but despite that they were built.
The fishing jetty will drastically affect the Olive Ridley turtles. But even today, illegal trawlers in the area are taking a heavy toll. These turtles on the Gadi Mata beach, the largest nesting site in the world, were clubbed to death by fishermen. Only 10 years ago, a dead turtle was a rare sight. But recently, researchers counted 3,000 dead turtles on this beach. And as long as illegal trawler activity continues in the coastal regulation zone, things can only get worse.
There's a CRZ notification under the Wildlife Act, which clearly prohibits the kind of activity which is going on right now.
Besides, the Orissa Marine Fishing Regulation Act states clearly that only local fishermen can fish in the area as they work on a small scale. But now fishermen and mechanized trawlers from the neighboring states of Andhra Pradesh and West Bengal are blatantly flouting these norms. What is even worse is that the World Bank is funding a 62 crore prawn project inside the sanctuary over an area of 537 square kilometers. This could spell disaster for the ecosystem at Bhitarkanika, as other prawn culture projects have proved in different parts of the world.
That the World Bank, despite promising that they would not do this, have gone ahead with a prawn hatchery very, very close to Bhitarkanika and have started, quite a lot of mangrove forests have already been removed. And this is disastrous.
Just how disastrous can be gauged by the fact that mangrove forests have traditionally been known to act as cyclonic barriers. This is significant because India's east coast is cyclone prone, and the mangroves protect thousands of coastal villages. In spite of this, thousands of illegal Bangladeshi refugees of the 71 war are staying in and around the sanctuary and clearing vast patches of mangrove forests. This is putting enormous pressure on the fragile ecosystem. The problem is, no one wants to deport them.
Well, as you said, they are illegal migrants. We are told that they are being encouraged to come in to increase the vote bank.
And they were given huge bank loans and were, went into the commercial fishing business. And that area became, from a very unimportant remote area, became an important source for votes.
In these circumstances, the Centre for Environmental Law of the Worldwide Fund for Nature filed a writ petition in the Orissa High Court. The Centre for Environmental Law managed to get a stay order on all development activity in the area. In spite of this court order, work on the jetty continued for a while.
The government of Orissa was not helpful at all. It reacted in a totally different way, saying that what was happening was for the development of the local people and for Orissa's betterment.
Left with no option, some NGOs initiated a letter campaign to all those concerned. The Chief Minister of Orissa and the Minister for Environment received sackfuls of letters urging them to save this unique ecosystem. Bhitarkanika is one of the last areas in the world where mangrove forests are still relatively untouched. The new Orissa government has proved itself eco-friendly by shelving the Puri Konark beach resort, but has so far ignored Bhitarkanika. The fate of the Olive Ridley turtles and that of a unique sanctuary hangs in the balance. The question is, will the new Orissa government see what's happening before it's too late?
That was Sunil Manoharan reporting from Bhitarkanika, Orissa. Before we go further, I'd like to read a letter from Kailash Patel of Bombay. Could you please guide me so that I too can get involved and introduce me to some groups? At present, I am a frog in a well, knowing nothing. So please, if possible, help me out by sending me details about Bombay. As a first step, I think you could contact the Worldwide Fund for Nature's Bombay office and see what activities they have this summer. You could then join them as a volunteer. On to our next story. Even in the days of Emperor Ashoka, roads were lined with trees to provide shade to weary travelers. Today, all over India, green roadsides are disappearing in the rush to build pavements. And nowhere is this more apparent than in Delhi, which is to witness its hottest summer this year. Here, pavements are being tiled in such a way that is destroying and throttling trees. Tisha Srivastav found that though pavements are essential, there's no reason why they can't coexist with trees.
You are looking at one of the reasons why Delhi has become the world's fourth most polluted city. These erratically tiled pavements are choking all the roadside trees to death, causing an environmental nightmare that's as bad as industrial pollution, and it's destroying the only green cover that the city has apart from parks and the ridge. Now, not even for a moment are we suggesting that there be no pavements, but the point being raised here is, what sort of a roadside pavement do we need? This is one kind of a pavement, so is this, and so is this. And the difference between them is for all to see. The first one, left to nature, is happily green. The second one has walking space as well as breathing space for trees. The third one has neither. Made of impermeable slabs, this tiling method destroys the trees but fills the contractor's pocket.
ठीक ठाक था जी ये, बाकी ये थोड़ा पैसे कमाने के चक्कर में इसको कर रहा है।
कौन पैसा कमा रहा है इससे?
ये गवर्नमेंट कमा रही है जी।
What we think is just a harmless walking surface is actually made up of
cement, bajri, rodi and badarpur or bricks. So all these items by themselves, they are highly polluting at the source. For whatever reason, if these tiles have to be dug, then the malba that comes out of the digging, this has to be discarded into this garbage dumps or the landfills.
And in spite of knowing this, the municipal authorities are indiscriminately tiling residential backyards, making pavements even bigger than the roads, and retiling arbitrarily, and flouting every tree care rule as they go along. It's no wonder then that there have been innumerable tree deaths at the hands of a horticulture department that prides itself on tree plantations, Van Mahotsavs and Ye Delhi Hara Shehar. Coming to think of it, how is a Hara Shehar really any better than just a Bhara Shehar that Delhi has become today? Let's take a leaf out of our old school textbooks for that. Then why destroy them? In the name of pedestrian convenience? Why not use semi-porous tiles in areas where there is heavy pedestrian traffic? The West is converting to this, and closer home Bangalore, the Garden City has used it very successfully. In fact, in Delhi, it will make it easier for pedestrians to walk on in the rainy season, as there will be no flooding around pavements. And why on earth tile where there are no pedestrians moving around at all? For example, national highways.
This is absolutely arbitrary decision which is being taken by the engineers. This all is being done in the name of environment improvement. Lot of tiling work on the central wall without understanding the areas are being paved.
Tiles, actually this business must be stopped as far as possible. Wherever it is very much essential and we have a lot of pedestrian traffic, only in those places we should have tiles. Otherwise, in other areas we should totally stop it.
If the powers that be all agree that there should be no tiling, then why is it carrying on?
We learned from MLA, a senior ruling party MLA, and from some other people in the government that and the contractors themselves, that in contractor MCD and officialdom parlance, this new form of tiling is called, they sort of give it this name of Malai, which is like, which is very easy money for very little work. And since it is a very easy thing, and as I said earlier, it's not a house which is going to fall on somebody's head. So nobody's scared.
So the more they tile, the more money they make, which obviously means not even leaving an extra inch for trees.
I think it is a sheer wastage of public money.
The cost of tiling a 1 kilometer stretch is about 8 to 10 lakhs rupees. This is minus any labor costs. Is this why it's going berserk in almost all parts of Delhi? In fact, over the past 1 year alone, almost 300 crores have been spent on tiling. Where are the resources coming from? Where is the much talked about resource crunch? Why is tiling such a priority over more critical issues? Why are the authorities tiling the city away so efficiently? As conscientious citizens, it is in our interest to ask these questions.
The people should write us wherever they find. They should just walk up with the government and the government will take action. Then they should monitor whether we are working as per their wishes or not. So pressure group is necessary.
While the authorities as usual evade the issue, the answer to this problem lies in this kind of a middle path, a Hara and Bhara city. The authorities have to leave the less frequented roadsides as they are and step up strict tree care surveillance in areas where pedestrians walk busily by. After all, we have no more time-honoured way to fight pollution and to fight the reality of being the world's fourth most polluted city.
By planting 28 million hectares of degraded forest in 5 years, employment for 200 million people can be generated every year.